Good morning. Thanks for joining me today. This morning we'll be in Numbers chapter 33, verse 40, through chapter 35, verse 34. The king of Arad, the Canaanite king who lived in the south land of Canaan, heard about the approach of the Israelites. They traveled from Mount Hor and camped in Zalmonah. They traveled from Zalmonah and camped in Punon. They traveled from Punon and camped in Oboth. They traveled from Oboth and camped in Abarim. On the border of Moab, they traveled from Lim and camped in Dibon-Gad. They traveled from Dibon-Gad and camped in Almon-Diblathaim. They traveled from Almon-Diblathaim and camped in the mountains of Abarim before Nebo. They traveled from the mountains of Abarim and camped in the plains of Moab by the Jordan River across from Jericho. They camped by the Jordan, from Beth Jeshmoth as far as Abel Shittim, in the plains of Moab. The Lord spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. He said, "Speak to the Israelites and tell them, when you have crossed the Jordan into the land of Canaan, you must drive out all the inhabitants of the land before you, destroy all their carved images and all their molten images, and demolish their high places. You must dispossess the inhabitants of the land and live in it, for I have given you the land to possess it. You must divide the land by lot for an inheritance among your families. To a larger group, you must give a larger inheritance, and to a smaller group, you must give a smaller inheritance. Everyone's inheritance must be in the place where his lot falls. You must inherit according to your ancestral tribes. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land before you, then those whom you allow to remain will be irritants in your eyes and thorns in your side, and will cause you trouble in the land where you will be living. And what I intended to do to them, I will do to you." Then the Lord spoke to Moses, "Give these instructions to the Israelites and tell them, when you enter Canaan, the land that has been assigned to you as an inheritance, the land of Canaan with its borders, your southern border will extend from the wilderness of Zin along the Edomite border, and your southern border will run eastward to the extremity of the Salt Sea. And then the border will turn from the south to the Scorpion Ascent, continue to Zin, and then its direction will be from the south to Kadesh Barnea. Then it will go to Hazar Adar, and pass over to Asmon. Then the border will turn from Asmon to the brook of Egypt, and then its direction is to the sea. And for a western border you will have the Great Sea. This will be your western border, and this will be your northern border. From the Great Sea you will draw a line to Mount Hor. From Mount Hor you will draw a line to Lebo Hamath, and the direction of the border will be to Zedad. The border will continue to Ziphron, and its direction will be to Hazar Enan. This will be your northern border. For your eastern border you will draw a line from Hazar Enan to Shephem. The border will run down from Shephem to Riblah on the east side of Ain, and the border will descend and reach the eastern side of the Sea of Chinnereth. Then the border will continue down the Jordan River, and its direction will be to the Salt Sea. This will be your land by its borders that surround it." Then Moses commanded the Israelites, "This is the land which you will inherit by lot, which the Lord has commanded to be given to the 9.5 tribes, because the tribe of the Reubenites by their families, the tribe of the Gadites by their families, and the half-tribe of Manasseh have received their inheritance. The 2.5 tribes have received their inheritance on this side of the Jordan, east of Jericho, toward the sunrise." Then the Lord said to Moses, "These are the names of the men who are to allocate the land to you as an inheritance: Eleazar the priest and Joshua son of Nun. You must take one leader from every tribe to assist in allocating the land as an inheritance. These are the names of the men from the tribe of Judah: Caleb son of Jephunneh; from the tribe of the Simeonites, Shemuel son of Mihud; from the tribe of Benjamin, Eladad son of Kislon; and from the tribe of the Danites, a leader, Buki son of Jogli; from the Josephites, Haniel son of Ephod, a leader from the tribe of Manasseh; from the tribe of the Ephraimites, a leader, Kemuel son of Shifton; from the tribe of the Zebulunites, a leader, Elizaphan son of Panarch; from the tribe of the Issacharites, a leader, Paltiel son of Azan; from the tribe of the Asherites, a leader, Ahihud son of Shelomi; and from the tribes of the Naphtalites, a leader, Pedahel son of Ammihud. These are the ones whom the Lord commanded to divide up the inheritance among the Israelites in the land of Canaan." Then the Lord spoke to Moses in the Moabite plains by the Jordan near Jericho. He said, "Instruct the Israelites to give the Levites towns to live in from the inheritance the Israelites will possess. You must also give the Levites grazing lands around the towns. Thus they will have towns in which to live, and their grazing lands will be for their cattle, for their possessions, and for all their animals. The grazing lands around the towns that you will give to the Levites must extend to a distance of 500 yards from the town wall. You must measure from outside the wall of the town on the east 1,000 yards, and on the south side 1,000 yards, and on the west side 1,000 yards, and on the north side 1,000 yards, with the town in the middle. This territory must belong to them as a grazing land for the towns. Now from these towns that you will give to the Levites, you must select 6 towns of refuge to which a person who has killed someone may flee, and you must give them 42 other towns. So the total of the towns you will give the Levites is 48. You must give these together with their grazing lands. The towns you will give must be from the possession of the Israelites. From the larger tribes you must give more, and from the smaller tribes fewer. Each must contribute some of its own towns to the Levites in proportion to the inheritance allocated to each. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and tell them, when you cross over the Jordan River into the land of Canaan, you must then designate some towns as towns of refuge for you to which a person who has killed someone unintentionally may flee. And they must stand as your towns of refuge from the avenger, in order that the killer may not die until he has stood trial before the community. These towns that you must give shall be your 6 towns for refuge. You must give 3 towns on this side of the Jordan, and you must give 3 towns in the land of Canaan. They must be towns of refuge. These 6 towns will be places of refuge for the Israelites, and for the foreigner, and for the settler among them, so that anyone who kills any person accidentally may flee there. But if he hits someone with an iron tool so that he dies, he is a murderer. The murderer must surely be put to death. If he strikes him by throwing a stone large enough that he could die, and he dies, he is a murderer. The murderer must surely be put to death. Or if he strikes him with a wooden hand weapon so that he could die, and he dies, he is a murderer. The murderer must surely be put to death. The avenger of blood himself must kill the murderer when he meets him. He must kill him. But if he strikes him out of hatred, or throws something at him intentionally so that he dies, or with enmity he strikes him with his hands, and he dies, the one who struck him must surely be put to death, for he is a murderer. The avenger of blood must kill the murderer when he meets him. But if he strikes him suddenly, without enmity, or throws anything at him unintentionally, or with any stone large enough that a man could die without seeing him, and throws it at him, and he dies, even though he was not his enemy, nor sought his harm, then the community must judge between the slayer and the avenger of blood according to these decisions. The community must deliver the slayer out of the hand of the avenger of blood, and the community must restore him to the town of refuge to which he fled, and he must live there until the death of the high priest, who was anointed with the consecrated oil. But if the slayer at any time goes outside the boundary of the town to which he had fled, and the avenger of blood finds him outside the borders of the town of refuge, and the avenger of blood kills the slayer, he will not be guilty of blood, because the slayer should have stayed in his town of refuge until the death of the high priest. But after the death of the high priest, the slayer may return to the land of his possessions. So these things must be a statutory ordinance for you throughout your generations in all the places where you live. Whoever kills any person, the murderer must be put to death by the testimony of witnesses, but one witness cannot testify against any person to cause him to be put to death. Moreover, you must not accept a ransom for the life of a murderer who is guilty of death. He must surely be put to death. And you must not accept a ransom for anyone who has fled to a town of refuge, to allow him to return home and live on his own land before the death of the high priest. You must not pollute the land where you live, for blood defiles the land, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed there, except by the blood of the person who shed it. Therefore do not defile the land that you will inhabit, in which I live, for I, the Lord, live among the Israelites. So you have the latter half of the Israelites' journeys. A description of what's going to happen when they get into the promised land. That is, they must drive out the inhabitants that are in there, and the land must be portioned up according. to the ancestral tribes. So that is split into, what would that be that? Probably 11, I want to say. Because you have the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh on the other side of the Jordan, so they're not going to get a portion among their brothers on the west side of the Jordan. So that's 3 out, but you have the other half-tribe, which is Ephraim, so that's 1. Oh, I guess it's just the 10 on the other side of the Jordan then. Except the Levites don't get a portion, so I guess it's 9 sections. And then from among the towns that are allotted there, the Levites get some 48 towns to live in, along with pasture lands that are measured, I think, 1,000 yards out from there, out from each town. So it varied according to the size of the town. Yeah, 35.5. You must measure from the outside of the wall of the town on the east, 1,000 yards, and on the south, and on the north, and on the west. And then you have this proclamation that 6 of the cities of the Levites are supposed to be cities of refuge. That is, if someone slays a man unintentionally, he can go to one of these cities of refuge and be safe from the avenger of blood. Which, I wonder if this is just like a cultural thing, or that this was commonly understood that that's how it would be solved, was somebody would go and kill the guy who killed your relative or something. Yeah, in the ancient, according to Guzik, in the ancient culture of Israel, it was not left entirely up to the government to avenge a murder. Each extended family had a recognized avenger who would ensure that one who murdered a family member would likewise be killed. This practice was based upon a correct understanding of Genesis 9:6. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed, for in the image of God, God made man. Guzik goes on to say, this, if properly understood and applied, could be an effective deterrent to murder and not a bad institution. Yet the system had a fatal weakness. What if a death was accidental, yet difficult to prove that it was accidental? We can picture the situation easily. 2 men worked together, chopping down trees, when one man swings an axe and the axe head flies off, striking the other man in the head and instantly killing him. The surviving man had good reason to believe the avenger of blood from the dead man's family would track him down and kill him, believing the death was a murder. Therefore, such a man could flee to a city of refuge, an appointed Levitical city where he could stay safe from the avenger of blood until the issue was settled, and he could leave the city of refuge safely. Yeah, so it goes on to say the Bible goes on to say about the various situations that could happen, and the main discriminating factor between the actual murderer and the accidental murderer is intention. Yeah, but even in the case of an accidental murder, the manslayer was supposed to stay within the walls of the city until the time of the high priest's death, which is interesting. That the death of this righteous man would atone for the accidental manslaying. Yeah, and it makes specific proscription here that one could not ransom the life of a murderer. That is, they couldn't make a monetary restitution in place of the life, nor could they take a ransom for him who has fled to his city of refuge. That is, only the blood that of the death of the high priest, or the blood of the murderer himself, would cleanse the land, so to speak. Carrying on, Luke chapter 5, verses 12 through 28. While Jesus was in one of the towns, a man came to him who was covered with leprosy. When he saw Jesus, he bowed down with his face to the ground and begged him, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." So he stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, "I am willing, be clean." And immediately the leprosy left him. Then he ordered the man to tell no one, but commanded him, "Go and show yourself to a priest, and bring the offering for your cleansing, as Moses commanded, as a testimony to them." But the news about him spread even more, and large crowds were gathering together to hear him and to be healed of their illnesses. Yet Jesus himself frequently withdrew to the wilderness and prayed. Now on one of those days, while he was teaching, there were Pharisees and teachers of the law sitting nearby, who had come from every village of Galilee and Judea and from Jerusalem, and the power of the Lord was with him to heal. Just then some men showed up, carrying a paralyzed man on a stretcher. They were trying to bring him in and place him before Jesus. But since they found no way to carry him in because of the crowd, they went up on the roof and let him down on the stretcher through the roof tiles right in front of Jesus. Then when Jesus saw their faith, he said, "Friend, your sins are forgiven." Then the experts in the law and the Pharisees began to think to themselves, "Who is this man who is uttering blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God alone?" When Jesus perceived their hostile thoughts, he said to them, "Why are you raising objections within yourselves? Which is easier to say, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Stand up and walk'? But so that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins," he said to the paralyzed man, "I tell you, stand up, take your stretcher, and go home." Immediately he stood up before them, picked up the stretcher he had been lying on, and went home glorifying God. Then astonishment seized them all, and they glorified God. They were filled with awe, saying, "We have seen incredible things today." After this, Jesus went out and saw a tax collector named Levi sitting at the tax booth. "Follow me," he said to him, and he got up and followed him, leaving everything behind. Yeah, so Jesus here touches a man who was suffering from leprosy. And according to Levitical law, Jesus would have been unclean in touching someone with leprosy. But rather than Jesus becoming unclean, this man becomes healed from the leprosy. That is, the man himself becomes clean. So, demonstrating a different paradigm that God is bringing into the world. Also, you have Jesus healing the paralytic here. And I think the Pharisees rightly say, "Who can forgive sins but God alone?" And Jesus rightly says, "That you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." He performs this miracle, and the man stands up and goes home. So, yeah, Jesus is God. Carrying on, Psalm 65, verses 1 through 13. Praise awaits you, O God, in Zion. Vows made to you are fulfilled. You hear prayers. All people approach you. Our record of sins overwhelms me, but you forgive our acts of rebellion. How blessed is the one whom you choose and allow to live in your palace courts. May we be satisfied with the good things of your house, your holy palace. You answer our prayers by performing awesome acts of deliverance, O God, our Savior. All the ends of the earth trust in you, as well as those living across the wide seas. You created the mountains by your power and demonstrated your strength. You calm the raging seas and their roaring waves, as well as the commotion made by the nations. Even those living in the most remote areas are awestruck by your acts. You cause those living in the east and west to praise you. You visit the earth and give it rain. You make it rich and fertile with overflowing streams full of water. You provide grain for them, for you prepare the earth to yield its crops. You saturate its furrows and soak its plowed ground. With rain showers you soften its soil and make its crops grow. You crown the year with your good blessings, and you leave abundance in your wake. The pastures in the wilderness glisten with moisture, and the hills are clothed with joy. The meadows are clothed with sheep, and the valleys are covered with grain. They shout joyfully, yes, they sing. And finally, Proverbs 11, verse 23. What the righteous desire leads only to good, but what the wicked hope for leads to wrath. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you have a great day. Bye.